Everyone still looks uncomfortable.
Perhaps they're all remembered that old saying, power corrupts.
Hello, and welcome to Second Officer Slog. I'm your host, M, and with me is regular co-host Jackson.
Hello! Hello.
We're here to talk about Star Trek!
Hooray!
There's a big delay on that for you saying hooray. Be more excited about Star Trek.
Sorry, I'm all over the place. Hello, I'm very excited about Star Trek. There's been a lot of Star Trek this week. It's destroying my life.
This is episode 9.
The management wishes to offer a correction in the numbering of this episode. We forgot to account for the ongoing weekly Discovery podcasts. This is in fact episode 10. We return now to your regularly scheduled podcast.
This one is not about Discovery.
No.
This is about a book.
I know.
And
we're
some
still
episodes.
doing the books. As the as Discovery goes on, we're not neglecting our regular cast.
No, we're just doing extra cast on top.
So many podcasts.
So, since we have another one of these we're recording tomorrow about Discovery Episode 3, we're just going to get right into it, because there's so much Star Trek happening right now. There was no Star Trek forever, and now there's so much Star Trek.
I mean, partly that is on us for just deciding now to read all the books.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we've been reading all the books for 6 months now, so...
It's true. And partly of that is me of going, fuck, I need to watch some more Enterprise.
Yeah, you're in season 3. The Xindi.
I'm in season 3, the Xindi arc. Yes.
You know what the Xindi are now.
That was a big thing. I didn't know. And oh my god, I'm not going to ruin it for any non-Enterprise listeners because it's a good show. You should watch it.
Yep.
It's not as good as like TNG, but
no, what is?
Good.
It's the best Star Trek.
It's true.
So today we are covering 2 episodes, and then I'll tell you what we got next month for episodes, and then we'll talk about the books. Whatever. You know how this works. We are talking about Journey to Babel, the original series, season 2, episode 15, and Sarek, TNG season 3, episode 23. Next month, we will be covering the Corbomite Maneuver, the original series, season 1, episode 2. And then we will also be covering Operation Annihilate, which is season 1, episode 29.
I picked that one entirely on the basis of its stupid name.
It's a really amazing name. It has 2 dashes in it.
I hope that's how it's spelled on the title card.
It is. It is Operation space 2 dashes space Annihilate !
Okay, because I've seen it with just a colon, and that's that's some basic shit. If we could do this properly, get me the 2 dashes, Annihilate.
Yep. It's the season finale of season 1 of the original series.
Yes.
How much do you want to bet nothing of note happens that makes it different than any other episode, because it's still Star Trek?
I mean, nothing of note happens in TOS.
Yeah. Anyway, before we get into those, the book for the second half of this is the 3rd Mission Gamma book of the DS9 relaunch. It is called Cathedral. It is written by Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangels. As usual, if you do not want to know any spoilers about DS9, don't listen to the second half of this podcast. But, you'll know because there'll be a DS9 theme, and that's when you need to, turn it off. Next month, we are reading I Don't Have that 4th book up. Jackson, do you know what it's called off the top of your head?
Lesser Evil?
It is Lesser Evil, written by Robert Simpson. It will be the last of the Mission Gamma books. We'll be done.
Yes, we're going to take a break from DS9 after that because we've been drowning in DS9.
Yep. And we need a break before we get into more DS9.
We are close to the end of this first DS9 stretch, and from what I can tell, the problem is the DS9 relaunch came before Nemesis, so there's just a period where it's all DS9 books, but eventually we'll hit the post Nemesis books, and we'll be bouncing between series a bit more.
Yep. Anyway, we are going to take our break, and we'll be back with the episodes. First episode is Journey to Babel. This is Season 2, Episode 15 of the original series. This came out 17th of November, 1967. It is written by D.C. Fontana. It is directed by Joseph Pevney. This happens in the year 2268. In it, the Enterprise is in orbit around Vulcan to pick up a delegation of ambassadors to go to Babel with a bunch of everyone else from the Federation to negotiate whether or not the planet Corridon is going to join the Federation because they have a bunch of dilithium and they need protection, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the Vulcans come on board and it's Sarek and Amanda and no one knows who they are, and they're like, oh, this unapproachable Vulcan. And Kirk's like, hey, Spock, why don't you go down and meet your father? And Spock's like, Captain, these are my parents. And Sarek's very cold, and they have a problem. And there's this weird, like, all of these ambassadors are, like, arguing with each other and sniping each other about whether or not they should let Corridon in, blah, blah, blah. And a Tellarite turns up dead, and they're like, oh, maybe it was suspicions are put on Sarek. Meanwhile, Sarek has a disease, right? I watched this a week ago, so he's got like some sort of like virus.
He has a heart defect, yes.
A heart defect.
Yes.
And they suspect it's been triggered by something, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're like, he needs a transfusion, and the only person who has that type of blood is Spock. And Spock's like, well, I can't do it. I do not like my father, blah, blah, blah. Also, it's like dangerous. And then they try to convince Spock to do it. And meanwhile, the whatever's going on killing ambassadors attacks Kirk, and Kirk is stabbed, and now Spock can't do it because he has to control the ship, and no one else is capable of doing it, even though there's plenty of people who can control the ship, like Scotty, who's apparently third in line, which, given how things went when they were where Scotty took the ship and was like not answering distress calls, maybe Scotty's the wrong person to be third in command of the starship.
I mean, it worked out fine then, and it's worked out fine now.
I don't trust Scotty commanding a starship. That's what I'm saying.
Well, look.
Anyway, it turns out one of the Andorian delegates is actually not an Andorian. He's a
spy.
I don't remember. He's a spy. Do they say what is he like from a race or something?
No, because the B plot of this episode is a ship is approaching Enterprise that is like better and cooler, but no one really knows what it's doing. And it turns out this fake Andorian has weapons and transceivers hidden in his prosthetics, communicating with this ship.
Also, they are Orions.
Yes, well, that's the big reveal at the end.
Yes, right. But I wanted to know if that Andorian faker was somebody, and yes, he's an Orion.
Yes, he is. I think he's an Orion, or he's working for the Orions. I don't remember how specific it was, because the
Memory Alpha says they are Orions.
Yes, because basically, all the day is saved as the plan Kirk has, which is amazingly dumb, is he is going to go to the bridge and pretend like he's not like recovering from awful surgery and act like he's not in pain and go, I'm fine, and order Spock to go down to the sick bay and do this transplant. Meanwhile, the second that happens, he's going to then transfer command to Scotty and go back to sick bay, but like under disguise, and go to his quarters. But this is interrupted by the Orions having an attack, and they figure out how to do it, and everything is fine, and then they discover this Andorian is not an Andorian, and he commits suicide, the ship commits suicide, and everyone avoids capture. But that actually doesn't matter, because once the plot is resolved, it ends in a Looney Tunes comedy moment, as with both Kirk and Spock, like indisposed, Dr. McCoy literally turns to the camera and goes, I finally got the last word.
Yeah, no, it is. The line is specifically, well, what do you know? I finally got the last word. And he grins, and then it cuts to credits.
Yeah, no, it Looney Tunes, that's all, folks. It's great.
So yeah, this episode is very silly. Honestly, like, it plays as like, oh, a murder mystery, this very important delegation, here's all the races of the Federation coming together. It's like the first time you see Tellarites and Andorians and stuff, but in actuality, it's just a bunch of costumes like sniping at each other, and then Sarek being like, how can you out-sass Spock? And he does a very good job of it.
It's a good time. It is much... you go.
Mark Leonard back from his role as the Romulan commander. They liked him so much, they brought him back to be Spock's dad.
Oh, he's really good as the Romulan commander.
Yeah.
And now he's Spock's dad.
Yep. They had to artificially age him up because he did not look old enough.
Good.
And he looks almost no different than when he appears in TNG like 25 years later.
No, he looks older in TNG.
He does, but like it's remarkable how well he aged. If I aged that well from the 60s to the 80s, I would be impressed with myself.
Yeah, it's not that he doesn't age, but the aging is good. It is good.
Yeah.
He's done well.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Sarek's there, and it's just the coldest dad. He's like, no wonder Spock has problems.
Yes, they both like spend half the episode trying to like out Vulcan each other, which just means who can be a shithead under the guise of logic the most.
How can I justify my emotional aloofness?
Yeah. Oh god, the Vulcans are so extra.
Yep. Well, also, Sarek is apparently he's upset that his son did not join the Vulcan Science Academy and instead went into Starfleet.
Yes.
Spock's mom, Amanda, yes, it's Amanda, does not care. She's like, no, I love my son. She like in engineering, Spock's just sitting there, and she comes up, she's like, how's it doing? And Sarek's like, wife, attend to me, and they do their hand finger touching thing.
He does say Borat voice my wife when he needs anyone, well, specifically his wife.
I mean, he does introduce her as she who is my wife. It's just a Vulcan thing. But
yes?
the future has ruined it because now it's just my wife.
Oh, he does it in the next episode as well. He just says, my wife, come here.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah,
So he's ridiculous. The space mystery with the like ship that's way better the ship that's way better than them that can like go warp 10.
You know, weird spinny ship.
Yeah.
The thing with these that I always like doing when we watch these episodes, if you go on YouTube, there's a comparison of special effects of every episode of the original series, because the versions we're watching on Netflix have like the replaced like CG special effects, and that ship is just like a light effect in the original show, and it's very silly. So because it just looks like a photon torpedo effect.
This is one of the most expensive episodes of the original series. Looking at the Memory Alpha, one of the like little facts is that originally Sarek is just meant to beam aboard the ship, but instead they have him fly in on a shuttle because they can reuse shuttle footage. And so that whole introduction scene was changed because they didn't even have money left over for a one transporter effect because of all the costumes.
Yeah.
It's the first big it's a prosthetic nightmare because we just have all these races together, and which is great because anytime we can see a Tellarite, I'm on board.
Yeah, you got Tellarites who the masks are so bad they don't even have eyes really.
Such a bad mask. Oh, those effects changed.
You've got the Andorians who, the like antenna on the Andorians, I know they were always supposed to move and they're like, we could never get it to work. But thinking of Andorians as how they're depicted in Enterprise, those Andorians look terrible.
They really do.
And
it's so
then there's
clear
like,
the paint is just paint.
Yep. And then there's those like little gold people running around. Which are the most Star Trek aliens possible.
They don't actually factor into anything. They're just in the scenes.
Yep. And and then that shuttle effect, even in the original, is like a really incredible like miniature shot of the shuttle coming in and landing, and like the shuttle bay doors closing.
Yes,
and it's a lot.
That is,
Spock and Sarek comes in. Vulcan robes not as good on the original series.
No.
The way that those got defined instantly in the motion picture and carried on, I really like late period Vulcan clothing. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, the murder mystery is very silly because everyone's like, oh, it could be Sarek. And I guess the implication is that Sarek's a giant dick, so you're supposed to think he did it. But also, he's Sarek. He's Spock's dad. He's a Vulcan. Of course he didn't do it.
There's no tension there. Like, maybe you're meant to think that, but there's no tension there.
But like, it's really hard to say where the tension exists in these episodes, given that we watch them with so much, like, retconning in future episodes in our heads.
Like, yes, you're right. I would like to, like, one day actually talk to someone who watched the original series, you know, back when, and, like, engage with it on that level. But for me, and I'm assuming more, like, it's about seeing the characters interact. Like, it's Spock hangs out with Kirk and has some banter and goes, oh, I can't possibly relinquish my command in these circumstances. And then Kirk gives him shit for that. Like, it's all these weird interactions, and the plot seems kind of inconsequential. Which I think is, like, fair because, for example, in that episode with the whatever the one with the Romulans were called, what was that one called?
Balance of Terror.
Balance of Terror. Like that one, there's actual tension in the plot that there isn't in this. Like, not all TOS episodes are just silly, goofy romps.
Mm-hmm.
They just tend to be, and we have a great time with them.
Yep. The plot of this is like kind of inconsequential. The actual good material here is like all tucked in around the edges.
Yes.
Like the reason Sarek doesn't want Spock to go into Starfleet is because Starfleet uses weapons, and he's like, no, like if you care about exploration and logic, you shouldn't be on an armed starship with a bunch of soldiers. Which, I get it.
That's fine.
Like they mentioned, Sarek's like he's come out of retirement for this conference, which is funny because in that TNG episode, he is about to retire 100 years later.
Yep, he's not that old.
No. Sarek is the fucking wrestler of Vulcans retiring from their job.
He really is.
Yep.
I love that. God, Sarek's ridiculous.
Yep. And then when he's disagreeing with the Tellarite, he's like, are you threatening me? And he's like, if I was threatening you, you would be dead. That is the only logical response. Like, Sarek's very cold, like, you'll know when I'm ready to attack you because you will feel it instantly. It's so good.
And there's loads of moments like the obvious stuff that happens every time there's a Vulcan in this kind of plot. Because it happens in both these episodes where someone will say, for example, you are suspected of being a murderer. And then someone will say, no, how can you say that? And then obviously Sarek as a Vulcan responds, they should suspect me, for it is only logical for me to be suspected of being the bad guy.
Yep.
That happens about 4 times across these episodes.
Yep. They also joke about Spock's teddy bear, who is a Vulcan Salot, which is a giant, like, monster? I don't know. It's very silly. The way Vulcan is, like, not defined as just a exotic space planet at this point is very interesting to me.
Yeah, on Vulcan, the teddy bears are alive and they have 6-inch fangs.
Yeah.
Like, what? No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they don't, Spock.
No, they don't. But yeah, no, it's weird because as much as the Federation is like, oh, it's these 4 races, it's Andorians, Tellarites, Vulcans, and humans, you never see Andorians and Tellarites because they're too expensive to do. So it's just Vulcans and humans running around. And I like how much, I don't know how Andorians and Tellarites help the Federation because they both seem like the shittiest races in Star Trek.
Well, especially with like all the stuff with the Andorians, like specific reproductive process and like cultural crisis.
Yeah, but also, like, even in this episode, when none of that's established yet, the Andorians are like, we are an arrogant, aggressive, like, violent race. And then the Tellarites are like, we are an arrogant, aggressive, argumentative race. It's like, why did either of you become a founding member of the Federation?
We are the evil aliens, but scheming. And we are the evil aliens, but loud.
Yeah. Also, the Andorians are just what the Klingons are in TNG.
Yes. Like, exactly.
Yeah.
It's really weird knowing that, like, because of when the design of the Klingons happened, because of how all that stuff got basically defined by TNG, that Klingons don't exist at this point, really?
Yeah. Yeah, no, Klingons are a very different thing at this point. Like, even, like, Klingons being about honor is a Star Trek 3 thing.
Yeah. They're just kind of evil at this point, like, weird, and then they become, like, Russian allegory. I haven't watched enough TOS and, like, to know the specific stuff, but they just seem to be, we need an evil alien.
Brown-faced pirates.
Yep. They're just space pirates, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that like Enterprise backfills that in and Discovery also is having some real Klingon stuff because Klingon's good. You gotta have the Klingons.
Real Sarek stuff. Sarek on his bullshit forever with his daughter that he picked up in a like ruined base, and then his human wife that he has, and the human wife he'll have 100 years from now.
He could
Sarek's
not
got a
stop.
real problem.
Sarek is like, I am the pinnacle of this logical Vulcan ambassador. I am truly the perfect representation of that. But every time he shows up, he's like, here is my new human woman of some relation who I am like going to imprint my logic onto, but is secretly just like emotionally buoying me because that's all I really need, but can never admit it.
You know, I don't even want Spock's blood. He's not Vulcan enough.
Oh, the whole scene and that whole plot line about the blood thing is like, he goes, oh, we need to do a transfusion. And you go, okay, so we need Spock's blood. But that takes about 5 minutes full of screen time of them going through different options that they can do and 2 separate scenes before they go, actually, the only option is Spock's blood.
Yep. And then when they're doing the transfusion, they're doing like a heart surgery on Sarek, and McCoy's like doing the surgery, and they like anesthetize Spock because they're like doing the blood transfusion, and so he's supposed to be knocked out, but he actually spends the entire time like looking up every time some alarm goes off in the surgery.
He tries to get up mid-surgery.
Yeah, he's just in the background constantly like trying to sit up and then being told to lay back down. It's very goofy.
Oh, it's a silly time. It's a good time.
I can't believe people thought Star Trek was a serious show ever.
I know, right?
What a cartoon.
It's great.
Yeah, no, this is a really good episode of Star Trek. I like Sarek a lot. I like what it does for everybody. It's weird to me because, like, as someone who didn't watch a lot of TOS and mostly was, like, informed by TNG, like, Spock and his dad and all the weird, aggressive, like, oh, Spock was bullied and then went into Starfleet, blah, blah. There was in, like, Trek 09, I thought was, like, and mostly elaborated out for that movie. And it doesn't really feel like it, like, that feels like a thing that could happen in this universe, given what we're working with here.
Well, he mentioned, like, the Vulcan bullies in this episode, but I still hate the Vulcan bullies in 09. They're still terrible. They still suck.
I mean, it would not be how Vulcans bully someone.
I trust you have prepared new insults for today. Fuck off. God, I hate 09 so much. We're going to watch that one soon. We're going to yell about it.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, no, they would devise much more, like, passive-aggressive ways to bully someone.
Yes, no, it's not like there are a dearth of examples of how Vulcans bully. I think that's why it annoys me. Because Vulcan bullying is one of the most defined bits of lore of the show.
That is how Vulcans interact with humans exclusively, almost.
There is an entire episode of DS9 that I can't mention because it would ruin something so special devoted to this idea.
Yep. Yeah, no, Vulcans are the universe's bully, the way, and they just condescend and whatever. And the best part is that you feel like every human knows Vulcans are full of shit.
Yeah. Yes.
But, like, in canon, like, McCoy and Kirk are like, oh, they're just being Vulcans, whatever. We're just gonna work around them. Yep. It's not a problem.
It's good. It's a good time.
So let's move on to Sarek. Jackson, would you like to introduce Sarek for us?
Sarek is Spock's dad. No, Sarek is TNG episode 23 of season 3, first aired in 1990, which means it is set in 2366. It is written by, the teleplay is by Peter S. Beagle, and the story is credited to Peter S. Beagle from an unpublished story from Mark Cushman and Jake Jacobs, because fucking TNG pitching was off the rails.
Yeah.
They just let anyone submit scripts, and they just, like, threw them in a blender. And, like, I know this one had, like, a Ronald D. Moore and Ira Bear rewrite. Like, it's crazy. It was directed by Les Landau.
Yes. What happens in this episode, Jackson?
In this episode, the Enterprise is on a mission to go to negotiate something with what is the race? The Ligarans. They are on to have a negotiation with the Ligarans that Sarek has basically been working for 90 years, he says. This is a mysterious race that they have to use Sarek's negotiation skills, and so the Enterprise welcomes Sarek on board in order to conduct this negotiation. After he comes on board, though, strange things start happening around the ship. Stop me if you've heard this before on TNG. Everyone starts acting slightly out of character. This is shown by, an amazing scene between Wesley and Geordi where they get into a fight about who's, like, better with girls, which, lol.
Oh, the blind leading the blind there.
Yeah, I know. And in a actually super, like, a really weird and affecting scene in a way that Star Trek often isn't, Sarek comes to a Mozart recital that is being played by 3 string quartet players who we've never seen, who are, like, clearly expert human string quartet people, and then Data leading them because he's clearly so much better than them because they suck because they're people.
Before not to interrupt the thing, but
yes.
One of the people in that string quartet is the oldest person on the ship by 20 years. It's just the oldest man.
He's great. He's here and he plays I think he plays violin.
Yeah. But he's ancient for the ship.
He's great, but he's not as good as a fucking android. And in this scene, as the lights go down and everyone's watching this beautiful music and it goes on for ages, and it just, like, Sarek begins to cry and, like, a single tear falls down his face and he slowly walks out and everyone notices this. And there's like, oh, why is he crying? And then another scene of a bar fight which erupts, and so people realize that, something has heightened the negative emotions of people on this ship. Things are going awry. Also, Crusher hits Wesley.
Yes, that happens. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, that is one of the things that happens in this bit. And they realize that what has happened to Sarek is that he is suffering from Bendai syndrome. Is that the name of it? I think it is.
Yes, it is
He's
Bendai
suffering
syndrome.
from Bendai syndrome.
It is incredibly rare medical affliction. Like, it's so rare that they're like, oh, there hasn't been a case in Sarek's lifetime. But Vulcans over 200 lose emotional control. It is like a degenerative illness.
He is basically he is getting old, and so is like not retaining the ability to suppress his emotions in the way that he like holds true as the crucial thing he has to do as a Vulcan. And that means that he can't like carry out this negotiation. And the bulk of the episode after this is trying to delicately put this to him and his staff, who are either deluding him or themselves to varying degrees to protect from this virus. And Picard goes to confront him about it. And eventually Sarek like bubbles up in a fit of emotion and realizes, oh no, this is true. I do have this disease and something has to change. But then a last-minute suggestion reveals a third solution that had not been considered, as Sarek's new human wife, because the old one is clearly dead by this point, but he has a new wife, and she is also human, who is called Perrin.
Yep.
Perrin comes up to Picard and says, there is a way. If you mind meld with Sarek, then your strength could go to him and you could deal with the emotions for a while and we could complete this crucial negotiation. And so they do. And the negotiations happen off screen and Sarek is fine. But that just means there's like 4 minutes of Picard just having the full weight of Vulcan emotions for 200 years being crushed down upon his human brain. And it does not go well for him. And that's basically it. It successfully concludes. Sarek and Picard will be with each other forever in their mind. Please, there's a comic that deals with this. Yes.
Get fucked.
Yeah, I know. And Sarek flies off, very sad and old. And
to go back to Vulcan. They're like, what are you going to do? And Keeman Drozen, his like human assistant, is like, there's not much we can do. But medical science is always advancing. Obviously did not advance far enough because Sarek will be dead in like 2 seasons.
He dies on screen though. He has another episode.
He shows up in Reunification Part 1.
Because I don't remember the context much of it, but I remember the scene. I remember being very sad.
He visits Sarek right before he goes to Romulus to find Spock.
Yep.
It is a really, really bummer scene.
Yeah, no, I remember it like vividly,
Yep.
But no.
Because by then Sarek is like barely coherent.
Poor Sarek. Sarek's great, and this episode's like excellent.
So I've been watching a lot of DS9, you've been watching a lot of Enterprise. We like both of those. This episode is like why TNG is the one, because the acting is so much better.
Yes. Like it has
like a lot of that is laid on the feet of Patrick Stewart, who is obviously an incredible actor, and Mark Leonard, who is great, and those two just act fucking circles around everybody forever.
They're so good.
Yep.
It's a fantastic episode, and because I've been watching Enterprise and like having a decent time, and I mean I've had issues with season 3, but it's fine. It's a good show. But like you watch this, and even compared to like TOS, it's on such another like it's so much more competent with what it's trying to like do. We talk a lot about the TOS episodes of just being goofy and a good time, but this is able to like perfectly intentionally balance the silliness of Star Trek, like that scene where they walk into the bar fight and Worf's like, I see what you mean.
Because Riker's like, there have been a bunch of reports of increased aggression on the ship, and Worf's like, I don't know what you're talking about, and they walk into 10 forward, and immediately there's just a huge like Old West bar fight happening, people throwing each other through chairs.
Like O'Brien just throws someone through a table, and Worf just deadpan goes, I see what you mean. And like that contrasts with the like actual core of this episode, which is this profound sadness at the inevitability that this guy is dying, and we're like watching it happen on screen, and the only real conflict is we have to make him admit that without just destroying him.
Well, yeah, the thing that this episode reveals is that he doesn't know, and everyone around him knows but doesn't want to admit it, and are trying very hard to protect him. Because like his assistant, what is his name? Sakath is another Vulcan who's like using his telepathic powers to hold Sarek's mind together. through this mission because Sarek's the only one who can do it, and it's like this will be the end of his career, and we want to make sure that goes out well. And Keeman Drozen is like, oh, we need to go and like you need to be very careful. We don't want to do any social events, and so Picard just goes to Perrin and be like, hey, we got this Mozart concert. That scene with them playing that music and Sarek crying is like so. The like shot of like the single tear running down his face is like very silly, but that scene is like one of the saddest scenes in all of TNG.
It's really affecting.
Yeah.
Like because this episode understands what like the amount of silliness you just have to buy into in Star Trek, but the amount that it is driven, especially in TNG, which is like true of all my favorite TNG episodes, by this like kind of quiet underlying sadness that will eventually bubble up to the surface, is very like pronounced here, especially in that scene, especially in the scene where Picard confronts Sarek.
Before we get to that, the actual shot is like really incredible because like it's all of them in the front row, and you see Perrin and Sokka turning to look at Sarek, and then it like rack focuses to Deanna looking at Perrin with horror, and then she turns and follows like Perrin's gaze to Sarek, and Picard's already looking at him, shocked to see Sarek crying.
Yep.
And it's such an incredible scene of like the music swelling, and it's played entirely silent as like the Enterprise crew, like the most empathetic members of them, are both horrified to see this happen.
Yeah, and like then it hard cuts to the ship in space with no monologue. Like it's a really hard cut. It's like super intentional. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And especially as like
very good.
I've talked about this a lot watching episodes now, and like watching it in HD, watching it on like the massive fucking screen that isn't the old TV I used to have. Just this very beautiful, very played straight scene of everything being quiet and it's a really long scene as well. Like that music swells for a while before it like climaxes with the tear.
The thing that if you ever go back and rewatch TNG, which I know you said you're planning to do at some point, but
yes.
Season 3 introduced like good lighting, and this episode has such great dark scenes where it's like Picard in his ready room before the mind meld is just like it is just like the lights are down and it's just him standing at the window looking out into space, and like Sarek's quarters are always really dark, and Picard's room when they do the mind meld is really dark. Like there's just a lot of really dynamic lighting in this episode, and I always think of TNG specifically as like a really flat lighting show, but this episode brings the art for the good story.
The lighting shift for season 3 is real.
Yep. So before we get to the dramatic stuff at the end, so the ways in which people are getting aggressive and being affected. So Geordi and Wesley get an argument about, like, Wesley's got a date, and Geordi's like, a date? You don't think that's going to go well, do you? And he's like, well, I'm not going to stay and read a book like you. And it's just these two boys who know nothing about women arguing about who's better knowing shit about women. And the answer is neither of them ever. And, like, O'Brien gets in a bar fight, which is a very O'Brien thing to do. It's also a very TOS thing to happen. It's like Trouble with Tribbles when they get in a fight with the Klingons.
But that guy stole his table. You don't fucking steal O'Brien's table now. Come on.
And even Picard and Riker get in like a disagreement about what they should do to Sarek. And so it's like, oh, this just heightens the emotions people have. Like, oh, like they're latent, like microaggressions or passive aggressiveness towards each other. Like it's turned up and expresses when they would normally be better than like to just say it. What does that say about Beverly that she just fucking slaps Wesley?
And it's played for comedy as well, because like every other scene basically will have this happen, and then we'll have a beat of like the characters realizing, oh, there's something has happened here, something is wrong. Like on the bridge when that happens between Picard and Riker, like they both realize that they are being affected by this, and then it calms down. There's like a moment of sadness there. But Beverly slaps Beverly slaps Wesley, and then it just hard cuts to her talking to Troy guy, and then I hit him.
And Troy's like, well, a lot of people have been doing weird things lately.
Yeah, I don't know what it says about. I don't know if it's just like it was written a while ago, or I don't know. Who knows? The implications are vast.
To be fair, of the entire cast of TNG, I think Beverly is the one most likely to want to slap Wesley.
Well, yeah,
for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's a mess. Yeah, no, and then the scene where Picard confronts Sarek is such a bummer, because he basically has to talk his way into getting everyone else out of the room. And it is very much like Picard is also a diplomat and has to like bend his entire will to this conversation here to get Sarek to be at the point where he can be the diplomat to do the actual work. It's great to see these two characters that are defined by these are the ones who can talk anyone down from anything, like actually exhibiting that at each other.
Yes.
And how Picard ends up outpacing Sarek, and it like Picard is so sad that he's defeated Sarek in this argument.
Because Picard, like, the episode opens with Picard talking about Sarek as this, like, legend of the Federation in the way that the audience of the show over years has, like, that's what Picard is. Picard is this huge legend. Picard is this massive captain that is a figure that everyone looks up to, and that's who Sarek is to Picard. And he has to basically convince this person who he, from a distance, like, admires and respects and loves, that they are incapable of completing the mission they've worked their entire lives for. And it's heartbreaking.
Yep. No.
It's also the thing that, like, defines, like, really good... Like, when the Vulcans are used well, it's, like, in this way of using the repressed emotions as... There is a catharsis, like, right there that no one can get to because it's... because of the repression, because of the way that the Vulcans are written. And so you just, like, slowly inching closer and closer to this really awful thing that you know is going to happen, and you feel it throughout this entire scene, which goes on a long time, and the whole, like, it fades to black at the climax at the end of the act, and it just, the moment he realizes that he's lost it's a lot.
Yep. And then the mind meld happens, and before you even see Picard, you see a lot of Sarek interacting with Riker. Yes! And he walks onto the bridge and like calls Riker number one, and it's actually like as disturbing as Picard's like mental breakdown.
Yes, it is.
Because like Mark Leonard just really carries it as being the most Vulcan again, but just casually being like, yes, number one.
When we talk about Mark Leonard being a really good actor, like that really comes through in the actual like big emotional scenes, but him just being this exact perfect balance of the Vulcan ambassador and also Captain Picard in the way he carries himself, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot. It only lasts for like a minute, but it's a really intense minute. And then Picard is just screaming in a dark room with Beverly trying to like comfort him, and it's so good.
It's a really good scene. It's one of the bits, like both of these two things would like... That wouldn't have come across with Sarek unless Mark Leonard was as good of an actor as he is. But then also Picard's like inhibiting of these emotions wouldn't. It's really silly. There's a way to read it as like comedy if it doesn't land right, because he's just yelling a monologue at full intensity for about 2 minutes. But because he's Patrick Stewart, he fucking nails it.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's a lot.
I really like Crusher in that scene as well. Like they have a good they I like whenever they get to be like actually supporting each other.
Yeah, no, they're low-key couple this entire show. So
I know. There's a moment where Picard like walks up and they just say hello, and Beverly has a moment of like checking him out quickly.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. I think that's kind of it for this episode.
Yes.
Sarek is interesting. We will continue to talk about him on Discovery, I'm sure. It's nice watching both these episodes, how much they kind of inform Discovery when you know them.
Yes, there's a moment where, like, before the mind meld, he basically talks about how, you can't mind meld with a human; they won't be able to handle it. It'll really fuck up their whole deal. Which,
specifically, it's a human in the condition that he's in, but it's also dangerous to mind meld humans.
Yeah, but like in the context of he mind melded with a human in order to like help her and is giving her logical advice, and what she did at the opening of Discovery is have the most emotional breakdown anyone has like had in Starfleet and been able to like stay in control. Like, I can understand why Sarek would feel weird about that going forward. Like, obviously it was not intentional, but it backfills into that very nicely. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Sarek. We're going to switch the book now. Come back next month if you are not going to follow along with the book for us to talk about the Corbomite maneuver and Operation Annihilate.
Annihilate!
Yeah, so enjoy those and come back for more DS9 after this. Our book this month is Cathedral. This is the third Mission Gamma book for the DS9 relaunch. It is written by Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangels. It came out 1st of October 2002. It takes place in the year 2376. Jackson, as always, where are we in the universe in the beginning of this book?
Okay, right. At this point, Bajor is about to be administrated into the Federation. Their application has been approved. The signing ceremony is incredibly soon. Okay, what are the there's a lot of threads, so I gotta take a moment. But that's the big thing. Kira has been attainted. She is not in the Bajoran faith at the moment because she leaked a text in the first book that we'd read in Avatar.
Yep.
What else is happening on DS9? Rolaren and Quark are an item now. That is happening.
What is Rolaren doing on DS9?
Rolaren is the security chief of Deep Space Nine. She came here after the show, after the war, and has been like Odo's replacement. She fits in very well to this dynamic. It's great. Her and Quark have been hitting it off because they're both very, very sad and they hate the Federation.
Yep.
They're like, oh shit, we're being inducted into the Federation. We hate this. We can't be here for any of this. And have bonded over this. Who else is on DS9? Because a lot of stuff's happening in the Gamma Quadrant.
There's only one more person on DS9, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's who's the other big? There's Tyranitar.
There's Tyranitar.
There's fucking Tyranitar. Tyranitar did not have enough to do this time or last time, but he is great. Tyranitar is a Jem'Hadar sent into the Alpha Quadrant by Odo to be the data of this relaunch series, to learn the ways of the Alpha Quadrant, to prove that a peace and understanding between the Dominion and the Federation is possible, that they can learn from each other, and Star Trek can win because Star Trek always wins.
Yep. So that's it for DS9. We have 3 Bajoran quote-unquote characters of note. Do you know them?
We have Vedic Yevir.
Yeah.
Who is... Vedic Yevir was like briefly on the show, right?
Yes, he's on the show.
Yes. There's a lot of characters who were like briefed on DS9, but I watched it 4 years ago, so... We have Vedic Yevir, who is a high member of the faith, who is like in line, like one of the people in line to be the next Kai, not like for definite, but one of the highest ranking possibilities. At the end of the last book, he was handed a thing, just this figure by Cassidy Yates, who is the emissary living on Bajor and has realized what he has to do. What he has to do will be explored in this book. There is also Shakar, who is Kira's old, like they hooked up a bit in the series. He is now the first minister, which means he's the political leader of Bajor. He is stalling talks with Cardassia, because originally they were going to try to like make peace with Cardassia before coming into the Federation, rather than letting that like handle it. They wanted to address that, but he has been stalling those talks because he does not like Cardassia for obvious reasons.
The other character is not technically a Bajoran, but
yes,
is everyone's favorite.
That would be Gulmaset.
Who is Gulmaset?
Gulmaset is a character from a TNG episode who is like just happens to be Gul Dukat's brother, because he was also played by
cousin.
Yes, Gul Dukat's cousin, because he was also played by Mark Alamo, and is now like the political leader of Cardassia in this like stage where they are recovering. He is incredibly earnest.
He's just their liaison to Bajor. He's not like in the government high up.
Oh, I thought he was actually in the government high up. Okay, that makes more sense.
Because that's what's his face, the drunk guy.
No, it's not.
I thought that guy was like high up in the Cardassian government.
Yeah, rip him. He died in the finale.
Oh, did he? Okay, I don't remember.
He has because it's
there are books about who's running Cardassia, but it has nothing to do with any of this, and we haven't read them. So.
Okay, yes, no, but no, I'm fairly sure. Like, it's been a while since we've seen the show, so there's like details of minor characters we don't remember. But I'm fairly sure Damar does not make it through the final assault.
Okay. I believe you, but yeah, no. The implication to me is that why can't I remember his name now suddenly?
Damar?
No, the other.
Dukat?
Not Dukat. What's his name?
Gulmaset.
Yes, is that Maset is like a well-regarded Gul, but it's not like in the government in the way that like he's running anything.
Okay, well, he is hanging out with Bajor, trying to get this peace negotiated. He has a cool crew. And he is on the Traeger. That is his ship. The negotiations kind of ended last time, but he's still hanging around near DS9. That is the space of DS9 in the Gamma Quadrant right now. God, there's a lot of threads, almost as if DS9 is the most dense Star Trek. It continues in these books. In the Gamma Quadrant, we have Nog, Bashir, and Esri, who are the characters from the show who are still there. They don't really need much introduction. They are basically how they were. Bashir and Esri are still somehow together because that was how they were in the finale.
The plot armor of being canon is strong.
Oh, that relationship is so doomed, and yet it is not allowed to end by editorial decree.
To be fair, they've only been together maybe 8 months at this point.
About 8 months, yeah. I think that's how much time has passed. But we have a few other crucial characters on the Defiant who are new to this book. We have Elias Vaughn. Commander Elias Vaughn is over 100 years old. He is Star Trek Big Boss. He is one of our favorites. We love him. He's great. He has come to DS9 after having an orb experience and realizing that he wants to explore the galaxy and not just be this Starfleet soldier who's been doing his missions. He wants to find the truth of the universe, and so he's leading a crew into the Gamma Quadrant. He has a daughter named Prin Tenmei. She is the pilot. She is a very good pilot. That is her whole thing. They had a whole plot line, but it's been resolved now. They are friends again.
Yeah, no, it's done.
We also have Shah. Shah. Fucking look, the Andorian names.
You were like, did I say Shran? No, I said Shah. Shah's right.
Yes. He is called Shah. He is an Andorian. Oh no, I'll call him they, because the Andorians are 4 genders, and this plays into the plot line.
He uses he. Come on.
You last time said you wanted to use they.
Did I? No,
you were you were close with me.
I specifically said. I thought I specifically said I felt weird about saying man and wife or whatever or something. I don't remember what my objection was.
You said that you wanted to be dealing better with gender than these books do, and I said I wanted to portray how bad these books deal with gender.
Yeah, no. I remember this conversation, but I don't remember how I felt. This is the problem with Andorians.
Yes.
It needs to be written by someone with better grasp of gender than anyone who's ever written a Star Trek book.
Yeah, and tragically, it was the focus of the last book, but Thriss, who is one of the bomb mates, Rip Thriss was tragically fridged at the end of the last book.
Yeah, by her own hand.
And that kind of feeds into this book, but not really.
We're not going to talk about it with this because it actually doesn't matter for anything. But the first 10% of this book is them talking about maybe it's a murder, maybe it's foul play. What if something's gone wrong? No, it's just suicide. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
No, they had to do that because the last book tacks it on so weakly.
Yep.
That they couldn't even. Oh god, it's a terrible plotline. Anyway, Shah's in the Gamma Quadrant and is very sad because of one of the bomb mates committing suicide. But luckily, doesn't really come up much.
No, yeah. So you want me to cover the Cathedral or DS9 first? Probably Cathedral, right?
Let's do the Cathedral. So what is the plot of the Cathedral in the Gamma Quadrant?
Okay, so the Defiant's just out exploring. They're starting to come around to we're about to turn around and head back through more uncharted space on our way back to the wormhole because our 3-month mission is about to come to an end. Because this is book 3 of 4, and they encounter a large, strange object. So Bashir, do they encounter the object before or after they run into the Denali?
At the same time. So the Defiant is lacking Bashir, Nog, and Esri because they are on the shuttlecraft.
Okay. So Bashir, Nog, and Esri Dax are on a shuttlecraft exploring the strange object that's tumbling through space, phasing in and out of dimensions. They have no idea how large it is because it is a multi-dimensional object and they can only perceive 3 dimensions because we're people who can do that. So eventually objects will just come up into this dimension and this thing will suddenly be larger and then be made out of different stuff, and it's very dangerous. And they all get affected by its cascade radiation or whatever happens. It's very strange, and something weird happens to them and they don't quite know what it is yet. Meanwhile, the Defiant is they encounter a ship called with these people called the Denali, or they don't know what they're called initially, but they're called the Denali, so I'm gonna call them that. They're a bunch of bug people being chased by weird plant people, right? That's what they call that's how they describe the other race, right? The Nizayan. They're they're weird cabbage people. Anyway, they help fight off the Nizayan and they pick up all the injured Denali, and they can't communicate with them because they have this very strange way of speaking and the translator can't deal with it and they don't know what to do. they rendezvous back with the shuttle who had this weird stuff happen, but they did end up pulling a bunch of data off of whatever that weird object tumbling through space is. It's like gigaquads and gigaquads of information, some stupid Star Trek term for a lot of information.
It's a big text file.
It fills up a third of the Defiance computer core. That's how large it is. And like, we need to translate this. Maybe these aliens who are clearly around this space can help. And so they get in a conversation, and they all start working on that, and they end up talking to the Denali, and Denali are these insectoid race. And they're like, yes, in there, this is the anathema / cathedral, because the communicator, it seems like they talk in a way that is like, everything has multiple meanings, and the communicator just spits out both meanings, and so they are often hard to understand, and it's actually depicted really well. Meanwhile, on the ship, strange things are happening to Ezri, Bashir, and Nog. As in, Nog's like, my leg itches. That's very strange. And suddenly his like fake leg that had been, he'd gotten an artificial leg in the end of DS9 because his leg was cut off. Anyway, like that is rejected by his body, and his body starts growing a new baby leg out of his stump, which is very fucked up.
Yeah.
Ezri has this weird problem where like her stomach hurts, and then suddenly she's rejecting the Dax symbiote, and so they have to remove it, which is an emergency because it'll kill the Trill that's joined with the symbiote if you take it out. And they take it out and put it in the goop because like Dax is arguably more important than Ezri if you need to save one of them, or both of them will die anyway, so you might as well just save one. But actually Ezri's fine, and the symbiote's fine, and it's really weird. What isn't okay is the patient Bashir is working on, because Bashir accidentally leaves a scalpel on, and when he goes to turn it off, he like stumbles because like everything's at low gravity because these aliens need low gravity, and the scalpel like tumbles and like lands in the chest of one of the bug people, and Bashir's horrified. He's like, why did that happen? How did I do this? I'm Bashir. I'm the best. And he doesn't know how to remember. He's like misremembering medicine names, and he accidentally almost kills the Dax symbiote. And it turns out each of them is being reverted to like their like original state by their interaction with the cathedral. And what that means is that Bashir is losing all of his genetic augmentation. Nog is growing back his leg, and Ezri and Dax are now, before they joined, how they are. And that sounds great for like Nog and maybe Ezri, but it's not great because in actuality what that means is they're being unmoored in time and are moving back and forth through various realities. Worlds that can live in.
Thank you.
What?
Yes,
they are moving back and forth through alternate dimensions, not time necessarily, but
they are. Well, yes. So like that is the key. Like mystery, but the point where it becomes a problem and not just a tragic thing that has happened is when they realize, oh, you haven't been reverted to your original selves. You've just been like disconnected from the truth of this reality, and so you might just disappear at some point and become like either go completely into another alternate reality or just not exist in any reality, and just everything's gonna go all fucked up. So they need to get them back to the cathedral.
Also, like Bashir reverting is like actually really bad for Bashir.
Yeah. We'll talk about it once we've done the summary, but I love the Bashir stuff in this book.
Yes. So they use the Denali and like they create this transporter relay, blah, blah, blah. They science the science and they get on board the cathedral, and they all have these like introspective experiences and then are alternate timelines where they weren't the way they are now and how that works. And they all confront their realities and deal with their character problems over the last couple of books, and they get back what is theirs, blah blah blah, and they're restored, and then they're like, well, time to go home again, and that's basically what happens on the Defiant. It's a very Star Trek plot.
Yeah, no, like a very big space mystery thing happens, and then the bulk of the book is like character interactions and complications to this, and then the human instrumentality plot happens, and then it ends.
Yep. Meanwhile, my tab does not want to load.
Meanwhile, Memory Alpha helpfully says, like, it's just like lists the storylines, and one of them is just Yevir and the Cardassians, which this is a plot line that had us both yelling.
Yeah, do you want to? My Chrome is like just froze right now. Do you want to take this?
Yes. So, after being like given that like figure by Cassidy, Yevir like understands what this like figure is and what he has to do, and what that is that that figure is like made of a metal that is only on Cardassia, and it like is a sculpture of someone who is half Bajoran and half Cardassian, and he understands, okay, I have to break all the rules, I have to like go and do something that I believe to be true, even if it gets me in trouble, to unite Bajor and Cardassia. That is my true destiny, even if it costs me being Kai. And so what he does is he just goes to Gul Macet and goes, "We are on a secret mission now. You work for me." And Gul Macet goes, yeah, sure, let's do this. Which is crazy. And so they head to Cardassia, where they go to this, like, what is it, like a city that has been destroyed in the war, and they're looking for something. And who else could show up but everyone's favorite friend, Garrick?
They do not go to just a city that's been destroyed. They go into an Obsidian Order base installation.
Okay, yes. I remember it was like something weird, because this says followers of the Aurelian Way, which I forget what that was exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but basically they go
they're like religious Cardassians, basically.
Yeah. There's a lot of lore.
Yeah.
And so what he does is do I want to get to the actual climax of this plot line right now?
No, let's save it.
Okay.
They find a mysterious thing and everyone's shocked, and Garrick's there, and it's like,
Yes.
oh, right, Garrick. I forgot about good old Garrick.
And that's basically where that stays until the end of the book. Because meanwhile...
Simple, modest Garrick Jackson.
I love him. It's great to see Garrick again. I'm like terrified that he'll actually come back to DS9. I don't need that. I think he's better not being on DS9.
So meanwhile, they're about to sign the Bajoran entrance to the Federation papers. Everyone is there. Admiral Akar is back, hanging out in the Hollow Suite, drinking at Vic Fontaine's, and
Yes.
Tyranitar meets him. And we'll talk about it, but it's not actually plot relevant, but it's an amazing scene where Tyranitar and Akar are just like being tough at each other. They have a macho off, and it's great. They continue to... Kira continues to wonder about Shaka-R being like shady as shit, actually.
Shaka-R is just Shaka-R. Aka-R is Aka-R.
Yes, right. Shakar is being shady as shit. And there's a bunch of conversation about that. What are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Ro finds a rival for Quark's affections or switch those. Quark finds a rival for Ro's affections in Hiziki Guard, who is a Trill.
Oh, if there was a rival for some random dude hooking up with Quark.
Who is just a Trill cop, and they like hit it off. They're like, oh, we can be security at each other in a very cute way.
But like, we can be security who like are kind of disowned by the Federation because we're like too cool. We're too maverick.
Yeah, which is very dumb. Quark and Ro have a date at Vic Fontaine's. That's also really good. Anyway, the big thrust of this is that Bajor is not as united as they pretend to be, because there is the Ohalaru, that's what they're called, the Ohalaru, who are a sect of the Bajoran faithful who have splintered off with the Book of Ohalu, which Kira released in Avatar Book 2, actually, I think is when she released that, right?
Yes, it is. But it is in that story. Yes.
Yes. And they believe that there is more truth to those Ohalu books of their prophecies, which have all turned out to be true, than the Vedics clearly messing everything up being Vedics in a Star Trek story. So, like, we need a better way to be religious. And the Vedics are like, no, you don't. This is heresy, and it's all a problem. They stage a sit-in at like a service on DS9.
But
they're like,
actually on every single, like it's one
Yes.
of many sit-ins across Bajor.
Because they believe that they need to unattaint Kira because she's just done she has done a beautiful thing for the Bajoran faithful, and being punished by the Vedics just shows their small-mindedness. And one of the front runners for Kai is also one of the Ohalaru, and so there's a lot of problems there. There's that sit-in that they're like, we need to call security, escort them out, and it almost turns into a fight, and then you wonder like, oh, like the cops are gonna call, is this gonna turn violent? And Ro is careful enough that it does not do that, and it's fine. But then there's also a conversation where like all of the Vedics are arguing with each other, and one of the Ohalaru Vedic is like, we're about to join the Federation. Like, Vulcans don't believe in anything. Like, they're just scientists. Like, if you can't handle us, how are you going to handle people who don't believe in any sort of god and just think the prophets are like wormhole aliens? And Bajor clearly has problems and is probably actually not ready to be part of the
Bajor has
Federation.
never been less ready.
So there's a problem. Everyone's unsettled, and then Vedic Yevir shows up, and he's like, "I've got an amazing thing," and he's going to show it to them all.
Yevir doesn't just show up. It's literally the signing ceremony is about to happen. It's like run out of time. No time for anyone to resolve these conflicts. Everything is shit, and they're going to join the Federation anyway. I guess we'll deal with it. And then Yevir shows up like, "My friends, behold!"
And what he has to behold is the last 4 missing tiers of the prophets: the Orb of Unity, the Orb of Truth, the Orb of Souls, and the Orb of Destiny. There's all of them. He's got them.
Those are all video games.
I imagine that he's like got like a giant curtain that he pulls down, and suddenly all 4 orbs are there, and everyone oohs and ahs, and like one of the Bajorg ministers faints, and it's like very intense.
He literally has a box like covered with cloth. Like he does basically do that.
Yep.
It's fantastic, and you're like, "Oh, is this going to be the thing?" No, actually, there's 2 more things. One thing is unrelated because before the final thing,
we'll save that for last.
No, we should do that now.
Okay, so they're like, "Oh, the orbs! This is crazy! On this day, this momentous day where we join the Federation, who could have expected?" Cut to Earth. Joseph Sisko is tooling around his house, the saddest old man in the galaxy. His son is like spirited away to the wormhole. His grandson is presumed dead. He's actually in the wormhole too, but nobody knows that. He's like that. Not taking his heart medicine. He's like closed the restaurant. He's like, "I just don't want to do it anymore."
Yeah, he is real. It's a real bummer. Oh, poor Joe.
And so he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go out and go." He's like, "What is I supposed to do today? I'm going to go out and garden." And he goes out and gardens, and he collapses, and his like assistant that was like, "Please check up on him every like day or two, make sure he's not dead," comes in, and he's passed out in the garden. He's dead. Rip Joseph. Rip Joe Sisko. Rip
Joe Sisko. So I immediately went, well, that's not true. He's gonna be in hospital the next book. There's no like that. If that is how Joseph Sisko dies, that is so deeply sad. That's like,
and I was like, that's so deeply sad. That's how Joe Sisko should die.
It's like, what if the visits had just happened?
Yeah.
I'm gonna start crying right now.
Yeah, well.
And so that's the big sad plot line, like the big shocking sad moment, and then it cuts back to DS9 where...
So yeah, the signing ceremony's happening, and Akar has got this giant, like, the paper version of the Federation joining thing, and they're like, the book is very clear. This isn't a real document. This is just to put on a wall somewhere, but they're going to sign it. This is what you do. And so Shakar is like bending over to sign it, and suddenly Hiziki Guard, that Trill cop, turns out to be an assassin and like throws a dagger or something, right? Like he shoots a knife out, and it like basically almost cuts Shakar's head off, and Shakar is dead, and he beams out, and it's chaos. Yeah. He's like bleeding on the paper, and everyone's freaking out, and Akar pulls out one of those knives from that dumb episode we watched, but it's not in time.
In the middle of like, because the whole plot line has basically been about Shakar is shady. Shakar is doing some bad stuff as the Prime Minister of Bajor, and where's this going to go? How is this going to lead into him being in charge while the Federation's in? And the answer is he dies, so I guess that's not a problem now. And now we have another problem, which is someone's fucking assassinated the leader of Bajor right before he could sign the paper that doesn't matter.
Yep.
And so you just get this chaos scene. Fucking Akar pulls out that knife. Rose going, "Oh fuck, what are we gonna do?" Kira's like, "Oh shit, we have to do something." Everyone's covering everyone. Everyone's running. Everyone's screaming. Hard cut. Turn the page. Continued in Lesser Evil.
Yeah. No, this book. So this book is like, of all the books we've read, I was telling Jackson as I was reading this is the most like a Star Trek episode in scope. Yes. But then the last 10 pages happen, and suddenly it's like a ridiculous part of this book series.
I mean, that's just like that happens in episodes. Like you just get episodes which are episodes, and then something crazy happens because it's a season finale or something.
Very few things happen that are the leader of Bajor has been assassinated by a Trill who like beams out all cool like.
Well, it's not so much a Star Trek thing and more just a TV thing, because I think Star Trek was before the era. Like even DS9 was kind of before the era of TV where I would expect shit like this to pop off.
Jango Fett rockets away, and Obi-Wan jumps out of a window.
Fuck! God damn! You're not wrong.
Yep.
One Star Wars reference every episode, every time.
Yep.
Picked a good one. This book's great. Like it's not
Yeah,
amazing
no,
or anything, but it's fine. It's a good time.
But after the last book, it was a delight. Like it's the fastest read. It's like none of the characters are badly written. Some of the characters that have been treated pretty poorly by these books in general are well written, like Bashir and Ezri.
We get some really good Bashir stuff.
Bashir. So the thing with Bashir losing his augments is like the actual probably best part of this book.
Yes, it's very cheesy because he has the like Hagia Sophia. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
He has a memory palace of the Hagia Sophia,
Yep.
but like in it is all of his information of like being a doctor back when he was first getting used to his like new abilities. And he's like, I've never visited in a long time, but now I need to go there. And then like the doors are locked and the staircases are falling apart. And then he just starts regressing to the point where like he remembers being Jules, and he talks about being Jules and how he was a dumb child, and he has visions of his parents and like taking him to get augmented. And when he goes in the cathedral, his like anime vision is of him like trying to save his childhood self from being turned into Julian Bashir, and how badly that goes, and how messed up he is about who he used to be, and how he still kind of wishes he could be that child, and maybe he'd actually be all right if he was just like dumb Jules again.
like he sees a vision of he's going through all these alternate realities, and he's like, oh, I have to save myself from being the other me. I have to save myself. But then he sees like what his life would be like if he was the other him, and he's not like a doctor. He's not like a super like human, crazy Federation saving everyone. He's just got a life, and he's like married, and he's got some kids, and he's fine, and everything's fine. And he like sees this normal life and just completely breaks. I love this stuff because I like Bashir a lot. I don't think any of it is like that intentional. But at least personally, as someone who like has autism, I project and read a lot into like the portrayal of Bashir as like a metaphor for that, which I think that is definitely present here, especially in the idea of being a person, like a kid who is like different and can't fit in, and so your parents like push you into this idea of no, you're special and intelligent, that's going to be your thing, and that is a friction point when you grow up with autism because which doesn't one-to-one lead, but there was a lot of parallels there, so I really like how it tied it. It hit me very well. I really liked it.
Yep. And then Nog has like the best time because he just grows his leg back and he's like, I'm walking around, I've got 2 legs, I can dance, I'm Nog. He's very happy about it.
That's it. That's Nog.
But his vision is of like he's facing a bunch of Jem'Hadar because that's his big hang up. Oh, the Jem'Hadar took my legs. Those Jem'Hadar bastards, they took my leg. And his vision is of Tyranitar coming, and he has to like confront Tyranitar and let him cut off his leg, and Tyranitar picks it up and is like, be seeing you, and walks away with Nog's leg. And that's how he like reconciles his reality. And it's the goofiest thing in the world, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah, these 3. I want to get back to the way that the Bashir vision concludes because it's like different to the other 2.
Yes,
we'll do so it starts with Ezri it starts with Nogs and then Ezri's. I don't remember which way around it is, but it basically does those 2 first. Nogs is amazingly dumb.
Ezri's is really boring. It's just her like with her family that I didn't remember. I had to ask you like, did we meet Ezri's family? And you're like, yeah, we did. They sucked.
Yeah, no, they're there. They're fine, but
then
shockingly, I don't mean to shock you here, but after a personal crisis, she realizes that she can bring value to Dax, but also has to remember that she is Ezri. I don't know if that's been a thing that's been like reaffirmed a million times in these books already.
Before we get the resolution of Julian's arc, we get Dax because they have to take the Dax symbiote onto this thing too. And you get a narration of the Dax symbiote, like a vision of it in the like Trill like slime caverns or wherever they hang out. I don't remember their names because who cares about the Trill? And it's just like he's like, I'm blind. I don't like being in confined spaces. Ever since I was an early worm, I had these visions of these horrible monsters that would come and like devour me if I was ever trapped. And it has these visions of all of its prior hosts, and it like talks to them, and it has visions of like all of the races of the Star Trek people, and they're all being devoured by these monsters. And it has this moment where it's like, these monsters are real and they're coming, they're going to affect everyone. When I get back into a person, I have to tell people that these monsters are here. And I assume that is a future book, but it is very silly. I do love the idea of Dax like kind of blind, like relating to its human selves or its Trill selves. Like it mentions that the serial killer one, I never remember the name of the Dax symbiote host because who cares outside of the 3 that matter, was like put down by Guard, our assassin's like prior host a long time ago.
Yep.
because Guard knows about Dax and asks Ro, I guess. Ask Ro about Dax, probably?
Yes, because Guard is the assassin security flirting. Originally there to be flirting with Ro in that plotline, but that is all a decoy because he's here to fucking murder Shakar.
Yeah. And Dax, the thing with the Dax and Ezri one is, as they both come to realize that, we need to reconcile our problems, blah, blah, blah. Ezri and Dax don't like each other, and I like that a lot. They're like Ezri clearly, like, she didn't want to be joined, and she was kind of joined by necessity. And it's like, okay, I guess. But I also like that Dax is like, I don't want to be in this child. Like, everyone I've been with is like really cool, has a bunch of neat abilities, is like an interesting person, and now I've got this like child in Starfleet, and I never wanted this. But nobody asked for this.
I like the idea that the Dax symbiotes, or not the Dax, but the Trill symbiotes, because of the way the Trill society is, which is garbage, are like super like snotty. Like, why am I getting the superly perfect bread hosts like everyone else gets? Gotta get this normal person. Ugh, gross.
I also think the implication is that like Dax is like a particularly storied and well regarded symbiote.
It's good. I'm getting Dax personified is great.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing, but it's cool.
But then, like, so basically what happens is all these bad things happen to Ezri, Nog, and Dax, and they all realize that they have to let the bad thing happen to make peace with it. And then in Bashir, he watches the bad thing happen to himself, but in his mind, like, he doesn't do that. He in fact like saves himself from getting the enhancements.
Yeah.
Because you think, he has to let himself get the enhancements, and that's what like his brain is telling him. It's like, clearly I'm in some kind of vision, clearly I have to let this happen, and then I can go back to myself. But is completely unable to because he's fucking Julian Bashir, he cannot let even his mental projection of his childhood self go through that much trauma when he could intervene, and so he saves them from the cruel fate of being like fucking engineered as a child, and then realizes, wait, that was what I had to do all along. I had to prove to myself that I like, regardless of my status as like what I have in my body, I am like driven mostly by the fact that I have this intense, overwhelming, usually problematic need to fix everything.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that that is the thing that is affirmed in Bashir, because he's not had much to do in these books other than Section 31 Abyss.
Yeah, for sure. Bashir's mostly been around to suck when he's near Dax.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it remembers that, right, Bashir sucks all the time and is not the best person, but God, he cares.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that like
really
carries him through.
That's actually all that happens on the Defiant. There's some stuff with the Denali. There's a really awful thing where they...
Yes, there is.
Where is it Nog that starts doing it? I think Nog's the one who does this.
I don't remember who started it, but they all
one of the crew, because Elias Vaughn is like really into like, we're like a modern Lewis and Clark going through the Gamma Quadrant, exploring space, blah blah blah. They meet like the quote unquote hero Denali, who's like the one they're actually going to communicate with, and they don't know how to communicate with it yet because they haven't figured out the translations and stuff. And so they like default to calling it Sacagawea because it's like, Lewis and Clark, it's our guide to the Gamma Quadrant, and it fucking sucks. Because the book just constantly refers to it as that. And they even go so far as to say the humans keep calling it that even though they find out its name, and they just let the translator do like the find replace.
Yeah, they're like, we decide on this name, so the translator will like make the name correct to the other ears, but we can just
can't be bothered.
We can't be bothered. God, it's like the fact that it's completely tone deaf sucks, because usually depending on who is writing this stuff, especially in DS9, Star Trek can be very self-aware about the fact that the Federation is just colonialism, but now it's like actually is, but not realizing that that's not what it that's bad. So it's just like, yeah, what if we were colonialism? Yeah, and you're like, no, please stop, please go back to when you were good.
Yeah.
Because like the most of this book is actually really like well handled about this stuff, but it's just clearly a huge blind spot, and you're like, oh right, sci-fi book writers.
Yep. I think that's most. So the one thing I do, we talked a bit about how like Quark was really badly written last book, and how none of his conflict really made sense, and the ways in which he was like criticizing the Federation when their actual critiques were like right there, where the Federation showed up to a trading outpost with maps. And in this book, Quark is much better written, and there's a great line where he's complaining about the Federation and how he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to just go like run my own business somewhere else." Where he's like, "The Federation are too well fed to realize they're flat broke," and it is the perfect explanation of a Ferengi's problem with the Federation.
Yeah, no, finally we have good written Quark, and I'm so happy.
Though also, I don't know which character it is, and I don't remember, but someone describes Quark as the last like bastion of Ferengi capitalism, implying that like probably within a generation, Rom is going to make the Ferengi join the Federation with all of his progressive revolution, and Quark will just be the one person banging out a living with money still.
Well, the thing with the Ferengi is that they're like they do a lot of this stuff, but Quark is like out here doing this in a very specific way. Every other Ferengi we've met is like getting up with schemes, doing other like he actually just has a bar and isn't some scheming thing, isn't some like stealing some stuff or either trying to make things better.
He is, but not in the same way.
There's just something very mundane about Quark that isn't true of the other Ferengis we meet, which you assume is just because it's episodes of television, so everyone else has to bring conflict into the plot line. But I like the implication that that's actually not true.
Yeah, he's living the ideology. He's like Worf in that way, where he's like, I'm going to live by my code, even if like no one else is going to in my race.
Yeah, even if no one else like really cares that much or anything, it like makes things worse. Yeah, it's good, and I like how it informs the stuff with Ro in this book, because they have a date in Vix.
Yep.
And after me like worrying, oh, they're gonna fuck up the Quark and Ro stuff because it's something that can easily go bad. It was handled very well. I like that.
No, they have the perfect solution to both their problems, which is to leave DS9 and get into business together.
But like it suddenly introduces something like this like immediate tragic countdown on their relationship, because there's fucking no way Quark leaves his bar. That is prevented by all canon. Quark can never leave that bar.
If Bajor joins the Federation and the station becomes fully Federation, he has to leave the bar because no one's there with money anymore.
There's no way Quark leaves that bar. If Quark actually leaves DS9, I'll be shocked at the like committing to that. That would be crazy.
I mean, the thing is they have not talked to Kira. Like Ro is like, I'm like tells Kira, once they join the Federation, I have to leave, and Kira's like, I'm gonna fight this. But never have they gone to Kira and been like, hey, what happens to us when the money goes away and we all become Federation officers? Because the obvious answer is Kira's like, I'll figure it out. I'm fucking Kira Nerys. I run this goddamn station.
Kira is the most harried right now.
Yep.
I mean, always in the show, Kira is very harried, but now being put into Sisko's shoes while the entire Bajoran faith fucking hates her, while the other half of the Bajoran faith like wants her to like embrace being this controversial religious figure, and she just wants to run the goddamn station and be left alone to drink her Raptagino.
Yep.
It's great. But no, the stuff with that date with those two was really good, because I like the moment where like, because she hates Vic originally, because this is Ro's first time meeting Vic.
She more like doesn't understand at all what he is about,
which is fair.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I barely understand what Vic is about, I feel like.
But like Vic basically addresses the tension that has come up between like this other Trill she's been flirting with, because she likes flirting with him because he likes fucking making Quark squirm because she's Ro.
Also, the implication is like he's just a handsome Trill man and Quark is Quark.
Yep. No, that's she just enjoys teasing Quark is what it is like. But like Vic is the one that realizes, oh yeah, you two are like clearly actually meant for each other in a way that isn't just you're flirting with each other. You're gonna help each other out. You'll be okay, kids, because Vic's the best.
Vic does not, however, know how to deal with Tyranitar when Tyranitar visits Vix.
Oh, Tyranitar does come into Vix.
And asks a bunch of questions about what Vic is and why he exists in this universe.
That scene's amazing. It has nothing to do with the plot, but I'm glad they kept it.
Yep, and then he runs into Akar, who's like, you go in and like it's implied that Tyranitar can tell what is a hologram, what is not, and he's like, this one guy, this giant man at the bar is clearly like more solid than the rest of them. And then that guy gets off the bar and it's like, oh, it's Akar, and he's here to ask Tyranitar how many humans he killed in the Bajoran War.
Except he does this by going up to Tyranitar and going like, I killed so many Jem'Hadar. You fucking have no idea. I murdered all your friends. And then Tarantel's like, all right, thanks, I guess. And just throws it back in Akar's face.
But he asked how many people Tarantar killed. He's like, none. I wasn't part of the war. But would your response to me have changed if the answer was different? And Akar's like, well, I don't actually know. Like the actual conversations about what it means to have faith, because Tyranitar is slowly like, the more he is around humans, the more he realizes that the idea of faith is way more complicated than just the founders exist.
But I still like how that's portrayed of him basically going, like, he doesn't understand what belief is because the things he believes are true, clearly. They're just true facts. Like, there isn't such a thing as belief because it's true. Like, it's like, how do you get through to someone who...
Yeah, the founders exist. They made him. He's met them. Like, it's a different thing.
But it's not even like that. It's like, his conception of the world is such that he isn't able to like change his world. Or he is through these course of these books, but the problem is that how does he acknowledge a worldview when he doesn't even realize that it is a worldview, when it's just truth to him?
Yeah, but also like, he was literally sent here by his god. Like, his god came to him and said, hey, go do this. And then he meets these people who like believe in gods, but they're not around. They don't tell them anything. They've never met them. They don't even know if they exist. Like, how does that even like gel with his perception of things?
He's like, I had a chat with my god. My god said I should do this. Like, actually. So when you say when you say it's the work of the founders, do you mean like they like called you to their room and said, hey, do this? Like, happened to me? Or does that not happen? No? Weird. That's weird.
Yep. And then they have a conversation about Tarantar's like, I don't think Bajor is ready. And Akar's like, well, I don't know, but it's worth taking the chance because I have faith. And maybe if they'll get in, someday Capellan will get in. And poor old Capellan 4, never going to get into the Federation because they're all busy wearing fur bras and living in tents still.
I love that in the middle of this conversation about the meaning of faith, he suddenly brings up, well, the ridiculous people from that one episode could get into the Federation one day.
I love, because we were talking about Admiral Ross, like, is Admiral Ross still alive? And yes, supposedly he's still alive, but they didn't use him. Instead, they take this character from this obscure episode of the original series nobody cares about and made this baby that is born and given the names of our main characters the admiral that is guiding all of this. And it's so dumb and so good.
It is peak the choice that people writing Star Trek books would make. Like, get this boring human admiral out of here. What does he have to do with anything? Nothing. Who cares?
Leonard James Akar.
It's good.
So, the last thing, Shakar eats it, right? But Shakar, it's implied, is actually like, there's some shady shit. He has a mysterious box that he's carrying around. And at one point, like, Asara Modine is like arguing with him. And Shakar's narration is like, oh, I don't know if I can trust her. Perhaps I should have shown her what was in the box. What's in the box?
What's in the
box? Is it like paw wraiths?
It's her head. It's Shakar's head.
What if it I feel like the hints it's giving is that it's like paw wraiths or something, and I really don't want that to be the case. But what if it is?
Oh God, I hope they don't bring the fucking paw wraiths back. That's all dealt with.
Yeah, I know.
Please don't bring the paw wraiths back, please.
You bring the paw wraiths back, and that's how you get Cisco back.
Oh, I mean, I bet we see Cisco in the next 3 books.
I mean, yeah, there's a book called Unity. I assume Cisco shows up for that, right?
He's on the cover of the book, not to spoil it.
Well, then, yeah, definitely.
But he is on the cover of that book. Everything is gonna be tied up, but I'm hoping because
Cisco's gonna be there when his wife has a baby, like 100%. You don't write that and not have that happen.
Oh, that's why it's been 8 months.
Yeah,
suddenly worked out why the timeline went how it went.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back on board. My hope is that Cisco just comes in occasionally. I don't want him back as a main character in this stuff.
Yeah, no.
But I do want him to see his kid be born.
He comes in, fights the pirates again, sees his kid, kisses the baby, goes back to the wormhole.
We're just gonna get fucking Advent Children paw wraiths, briefly.
Yep.
And then they're just immediately dealt with again. Oh, fine. I'll take this OVA bullshit.
Yeah, it is 100% that.
Oh, that's what we're gonna get. God, that's fine.
Yep. The 2 Ciscos will come out of the wormhole together, holding hands, father and son again.
I mean, we are 1 book away. After the next book, the book is called so we have the Fun Mission Gamma book, and then there's a book called Rising Sun, which is supposedly like will fill in all the Jake stuff.
Okay.
And I am very, very interested.
I bet that book's terrible.
I don't know. Rising Sun and Unity are both SD Perry, and they're both going back to the
Sure,
Unity stuff.
but it's a book about Jake and the wormhole. I don't want any of that.
Well, you're gonna get it. It's gonna be a whole book. It's gonna deal with the entire situation. You're gonna fucking yeah, no. Remember?
Is it Rising Sun like SON Sun?
Of course it is.
Good.
Of course. What are
Good.
you talking about?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
What is
God, you know what? It's look.
Remember when we started Avatar Book 1 and it began with a scene of Jake like reading this awful prophecy and us thinking, oh god, these are going to be terrible.
Yep. They've been all right so far, more or less.
They've been pretty all right. And they've not been bad in that way. That was just the one fear we had that was very quickly assuaged.
Yep. But, I mean, the prophecy is not fulfilled yet.
Yeah, it was. What's left in the prophecy?
There was the stuff about, like, when all the tears are shed, Bajor's new destiny will dawn, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the tears have been fully shed.
Yeah, and, like, the orbs are here, but the emissary's not, and the Avatar has not been born yet. Because the Avatar is Cassidy H's unborn baby.
That's true. I'm glad that child's just going to be a kid and not going to have some destiny plot in the future.
So that's it for the book. This was an alright book. I'm excited to finish up this series and fucking read something that is not DS9.
Yeah, we talked about how it's in 2 books' time, but actually, after the next book, we're taking a big, long 4-month break from DS9.
Yep, we're going to read some real Well, we're going to read the Discovery book first, and then we're going to read some real bullshit.
I'm so excited for Shatnerverse. You have no idea.
Yep, no. Let's see if you think that after we read it.
What are you talking about? Okay, does it have anything as terrible as Imzadi?
No, probably not.
Like, so long as it's just the part of Imzadi where fucking old Riker is carrying Data's head to chase another future Data who they're pretending to be Lore, if it's that kind of bullshit and not 200 pages yelling about, like, whether fucking is good, which way is it gonna fall? I know one of them's a romance.
The first one's a romance. There is backstory to Keeman Drozen in one of those books.
Who's gonna? I'm glad we watched Sarek then.
Yes, no, I'm doing this on purpose. I know what I'm doing.
I thought we watched Sarek so we could learn more about Sarek.
We did,
not about
but
Keeman
also
Drozen.
kill two birds with one stone.
About fucking Keeman Drozen, classic Star Trek character. God.
If you have questions, you can send them to podcast@normalmapping.com. That's the email, right?
Yes, please send them in if you would like to ask anything about Star Trek, but also you can send them in about Discovery as you go. If people have reactions and want to give their takes, want to chime in with that will be cool.
episode 4's Discovery episode either is going up today or tomorrow, as you were listening to this. If you were listening to this new, we have one question, Jackson.
We got a question?
Yes, I got one over Twitter.
Oh, nice.
At Trippy Jing asks, which Star Trek cast would you prefer to be the cast of a Star Trek dating sim? There's an instant and correct answer for this. So if you're wrong,
it's TNG.
Yeah, it's TNG, 100%.
Like, it's TNG.
Everyone's hot for Worf.
Lana.
Lana's not listening to this.
I know, but I'm gonna...
This is the most insular deep cut. Only 6 people will understand this conversation.
Oh, that's true. But yeah, no, TNG in a heartbeat.
Yep. Everyone there is dateable, is interesting. Like, there's wrong choices. Like, you could be dating Geordi. I don't know why you would, but...
That'd be a funny plot line, though.
Yes. No, it's the one with the most infinite potential. Every character, even the guest characters that are in a couple episodes like Luxana and Guinan are perfect for a dating sim.
Yeah, no, TNG is like the actual good choice. The ridiculous choice is Enterprise because I want to fucking see what a Malcolm line is like.
God. You are maybe the person most qualified to write that game, I think, of all people.
Okay, I thought you were going to say you were one of the people most qualified to accurately portray Malcolm's dating life, which would have been the meanest thing you could have said to me.
No. I just like your headcanon of the Enterprise people, so I would very much be into you writing that game.
Yeah, but I also have my problematic fucking... I'm big into Archer to Paul, which I recognize as paternal and dumb.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, no, whatever. I'm basic sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. What my answer is that there's no wrong answers unless it's a Chakotay path, which fuck off. Nobody wants Chakotay.
I wonder what he's going to do in that plot line. I wonder what possible plot line.
Probably consult his ancestors and say something stupid.
Oh, weird. Strange that he would do that.
Yeah. The third date is you go on like a vision quest together.
I never knew you were going to say the words vision quest.
Yeah, no. I mean, he only does it like 6 times in like season 1 of that show.
Yeah, no. I've seen enough Voyager to see that fucking happen. And I haven't even finished season 1.
Chakotay sucks every day.
Every day, God.
The only episode of this podcast that ever had a title. Chakotay sucks every day.
No, it's actually going for the title of every episode.
Yep.
This has been we've had a good time talking about Star Trek.
Yeah, we're about to go podcast about Gundam. That's a good way to talk about all of our podcasts. Jackson, what do we do for podcasts?
We have a bunch of shows. If you want to find any of them, they are at abnormalmapping.com. If you want to find them specifically, they're at specific URLs. We have Abnormal Mapping, which is the Game Club podcast. We will play a game every month. There is no topical discourse. It's just some cool talks about video games. It is welcome to all. You can find that at thebestgame.club. I do the Amory Score with my friend Molly, where we read the comics of Coheed and Cambria's The Amory Wars and listen to the songs. It's a very dumb time. The last episode that went up was maybe the best one yet. It's great. The next one, less good, but that's not on us.
That one will already be up, Jackson, by the time this podcast doesn't go up until like the 8th.
Oh, well, look. The podcast has some ups and downs because the comic that we are covering has some real ups and downs.
I'm really sad knowing Mayo's not in this next episode.
No Mayo. If you want to learn...
But you can get the podcast at
ineedmayo.com. If you want to discover about who Mayo is and share in our joy for Mayo. Because that's not mayonnaise, that's a character. That's Mayo Deftinwolf.
Mayo Deftinwolf himself.
Yep. We have the Great Gundam Project, which is a Patreon-exclusive podcast. You can get that if you subscribe for over $1 a month, or $1 or more a month, I should say, at patreon.com/abnormalmapping. We host some other podcasts, including Fireside Friends with Ryan Run. There's a lot of podcasts. We're busy.
Yeah. Where can people find you, specifically?
At Headfallsoff on Twitter.
You can find me at EM_being. I almost said Fridge Buzz now, which is my partner's handle.
Yes. Hoisted, truly hoisted home.
Which would be really weird.
Yes. Oh, I'm so happy.
We still have another podcast to record. So yes, that's it. Watch some Star Trek. Listen to our Discovery episodes. Tomorrow, it'll already be like a week ago, I get to talk about Orville episode 3, and I'm so fucking excited to talk about Orville episode 3.
No,
I depressed no less than 24 people with my tweets about Orville episode 3.
You watched that episode 7 weeks ago. Something has happened to time.
I'm moving back and forth through time.
The cursed thing is that something has happened to time is a fucking Churchill line from Doctor Who season 6, and I get it confused with the TNG line. That is the most cursed.
I know you said it, and that's why I said the right one, because I knew you were saying a Doctor Who line, and I cannot stand there are no Doctor Who references on this podcast.
I'm glad you also understand the fucking curse that has been cast upon
something
me.
has happened to time is a great line. The fact that it comes out of Winston Churchill's mouth in Doctor Who makes it awful in every single way.
I'm sorry, Roman Emperor Winston Churchill's mouth.
Anyway, watch some Star Trek. Enjoy your lives. See you out there.